Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose. The man who rules the world runs into the irresistible force of a man with nothing to lose in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get the regular and variant editions of John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose on Amazon.com today.
Joining. Okay, it says we're live. All right. We are live, and I'm coming at you with 5. Welcome to another episode of gboot2786 on my channel. This is Gavin Richard. Welcome to Gavin Richard Presents. I have the pleasure of having on this brother who is acclaimed author, acclaimed author and fellow YouTuber, Mr. Shawn James out of, what part of New York are you from, Shawn?
I'm from the Bronx.
Boogie Down Bronx, Shawn James, yes. And yeah, he has a YouTube channel, Shawn James. He is the author of over 70 books, is it? Including comic books as well as novels, including the
well, it's not comic books, it's regular books. I want to do comics.
Okay, I thought you had some comics. I'm sorry. Well, what other but you have the Man Crisis, which is one of the book that I highlighted. You also have a few other series.
Yes, I have the ISIS series, I have the E-Steam series, and I have the John Haynes series, and I have other books that I've written like the Thetas and the Spinsterella trilogy and some screenplays.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. I actually my internet has been acting janky, so I had to connect to my other Wi-Fi. So I was listening to one of your other videos from last night that you were talking about Marvel and so forth. But very impressive, my brother. Very good. And you've been an author and also a self-publisher for 20 years. Could you tell everybody how did you get into writing?
Well, I have been writing ever since I was 9 years old, and the reason why I started writing is because I saw the comics in my brother's comic book collection, and I wanted to make my own comic books. But because I couldn't draw very well, what I did was I started writing in order to make the pictures, and from there, that's how I started my journey into writing. And I have been writing nonstop from about 9 to about 13, then I went back to it at 16, and ever since I've been writing for the last 20 years, just developing and honing my craft. And I finally got a chance to publish my first book in 2002, and with the first ISIS. And then from there, I started building my career, and then I realized the only way I was going to be able to do it was to do it on my own, because trade publishers weren't going to pick up my stuff. So I started my SJS Direct imprint in 2009, and from there I went from publishing my first book, All About Maryland, in 2009, to today, where I have over 70 titles and a catalog of fiction, nonfiction, and I have fulfilled my mission of creating positive stories about the African American experience. And right now I'm trying to diversify the African American book market by showing that we can have stories in things like fantasy, science fiction, and we can talk about those aspects of the Black community that aren't presented in mainstream publishing, like Black sororities, group economics, and the Black goth subculture.
Right. Oh, that's very impressive, my brother. That's good. And what you say about self-publishing is very interesting, because I'm self-published my book myself, and I know how hard it is. Like I have a children's book that I've tried to market, and people have turned it down because they talk about having a literary agent, which are all barriers, I guess, when people want to write things. But you've done things on your own, and to do that for the last 20 years is very impressive. Yeah, so very interesting. And the comic book area that we were talking about, I did see part of your video. I also saw my brother, our fellow YouTuber, Torian Rain's video. By the way, is the fan bothering anybody or bothering you? Is it in your ear?
No, it's not. I use fans myself when I'm doing live streams, so I know it gets hot when you're in a studio setting.
Yes, it's even hotter down here. It's in the south. So
yeah. So I know how it gets, because when I do my streams, I have to have a fan on.
Right. Oh yeah, yeah. But I saw, and I am I'm a bit a comic book fan of the movies and so forth. But I would be lying if I said I had a whole bunch of comic book collections and so forth. I've probably only bought maybe a few comics in my life, and that was the X-Men and I think Spider-Man. That was about it. But since we're on Marvel and we were talking about Torian Rain, I saw the video with regards to the new Warriors for Marvel, uh, which honestly, when I first heard of it, I thought they were making a Warriors the movie remake. I didn't follow it, but I looked at the characters that you got, what they were talking about, and one of the characters' names was Safe Space,
Yeah,
and there's another one I can't think of the name, but these are
Snowflake.
the Snow. That's it, Snowflake. And these are the only two black characters in the Warriors. Am I right?
Yeah, so the only ones in the New Warriors reboot.
In the New Warriors reboot, and they're both gay. Or
One is supposed to be non-binary. The other one, we don't really know if he's heterosexual or not. So
well, well, I guess a good way to say is LGBTQ. They're both
yeah.
okay. But speaking of which, do you think so? Why do you think there's this effeminization of black characters in the media that we're seeing?
Well, this is something that has been going on for the last 30 years. And this effeminization is designed to socially engineer an idea in the minds of young black boys and young black men that feminine behavior is something that they're supposed to participate in. So, what they want to do is they want to effeminize the black man because that creates a male that they can easily control. What they want to do is break this man down so he's so weak that he's placed in a submissive position, because they know if they put the man in a submissive position, they can gain control over him. And with an effeminate man, he's a lot easier to manipulate and control than a heterosexual masculine black man. Now, I believe some of it is because a lot of these racists are insecure about the idea of a masculine black man, and they fear that if there are masculine black men, there's going to be somebody there to push back against their agendas. And they also fear that a masculine black man is going to be competition to them in the economic marketplace, because when you have masculine black men, they're out to do things like build businesses, create businesses, and build and create families. So they fear the heterosexual masculine black man, but the effeminate black man, they know that he's no threat because he's just like a female. And because he's just like a female, he's focused on consumption. And because he's focused on consumption, he's thinking about things like shoes and clothes. And he's thinking about being a rival and a competitor to other effeminate males as related to things like clothes and shoes, and not thinking about building things like infrastructure and wealth, and most importantly, building a family and being a father and a head of household over a family.
Pretty much. Yeah, I agree with that. And that even goes back to slavery times as well. When you look at the late George Washington Carver, who was the gentleman that made peanut butter, anything dealing with peanut product. I believe he was even castrated as a young child when he moved into the master's house. They moved him in because they had their white female daughter there. So in order for him to live there, so they I guess feared he would rape her, or feared that they would have sex and have mixing the race. They castrated him, and that's sadly something that they've been doing to us. And except now they don't castrate you physically; they castrate you emotionally, mentally. Uh, I see that with the black men wearing dresses that we see on television now. Sometimes when it's not even necessary. I saw it even at the Oscars with Billy Porter. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah, I know who Billy Porter is, and I've seen the way they've emasculated him and how they keep promoting him, like they have him on Sesame Street, and I found that to be quite disturbing, because here you have a man in a dress on a children's show, and again, that's about promoting that idea that black men are effeminate to young children and making them think that that's some sort of social norm. So I see what they're trying to do with that.
Right. Well, what's funny about him back in the '90s? There's a YouTube video of him actually singing a soul song to a woman. I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, you could look it up. He was a singer, obviously, back in the 90s. And I know that he had been on, subsequently, he's done acting. He's been on Law and Order. He played a gay male who was accused of molesting a boy or something like that at one of the comp- at one of these competitions that they had, talent competitions. So yeah, he's been around for a while, and now he's just getting his awards because he's prancing around with his dress on, and he's getting these on Sesame Street. He's actually doing the new Little Shop of Horrors voice of Audrey the second, that was voiced by Levi Stubbs in the movie, the late Levi Stubbs of the Four Tops. So there's some perks to putting on a dress.
Yeah. They reward all of those guys who put on dresses because they want to be able to continue promoting their agenda. And some of these black performers, they will put on a dress because they want those benefits and perks. But the whole thing is, once they do that, they wind up becoming compromised because nobody can take them seriously after that because they've been broken into a submissive position and nobody sees them as a man anymore.
Yeah, that's the worst thing when you're not seen as a man anymore. But overall, I think there's an agenda in Hollywood to push homosexuality everywhere. But in particular, I think they're focusing it on the black community, and black males in particular. So, yeah. But other than that, Shawn, being that you're from the Bronx in New York, how are things? I really want to start out with this with the coronavirus scare that's been going on. How is stuff in New York? Could you tell us?
Well, it's pretty quiet out here in the Bronx, and it's very tense, I'll tell you that much. I mean, from the trips I've taken to the supermarket, I mean, it's practically like a ghost town here in Parkchester, where I am right now. You don't see that many people outside. I remember before it, you used to see a lot of kids on the street. You used to see a lot of old people going out. You used to see people doing what they needed to do, and you used to see a lot of hustle and bustle. But now you don't see next to anything. I mean, it's practically maybe one, maybe two people on the street here or there going to the supermarket or going to the grocery store and coming right back. There's nobody really on the street. I mean, early on during the start of things, before they shut a lot of stuff down, I mean, you used to see Pookie and Ray Ray standing outside the Arabone store, but you don't even see that anymore. But when you go outside, you just feel this tension outside because a lot of people, they're very anxious, they're very nervous, and nobody knows what's going to really happen next. And that's what the thing is, because a lot of people, they're afraid of getting this disease, and then other people, they're just afraid of what the fallout is going to be. So it's a very, very tense situation here in New York City, as I see it.
Yeah, just be safe out there, man. Yeah, because I saw Cuomo has been on CNN and so forth, and they've been talking about it. Our governor down here in Louisiana, he's been on television. He's supposed to be on Face the Nation in the morning. So it's the same here. It's mostly quiet. Though in my area, there are still stores that are open, and I see there's regular traffic. But it's really scary when you can go downtown New Orleans and so forth and not catch a traffic jam.
Yeah.
So I know things have changed. Yeah, yeah. But other than that, your family and yourself, y'all are okay.
Yeah, we're okay. We're just holding in there.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I just don't know how I'm gonna take it with my. I got people in my house. That's the only thing that I'm worried about because it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're locked in. Yeah. So yeah. So the other thing I wanted to tell you, talk with you about, because you are in New York, being there, and I saw one of your videos where you talked about Harvey Weinstein and his conviction and so forth. First off, were you surprised he was convicted?
A little surprised. I thought he was going to get off, but I wasn't shocked. But because I know that the game is chess, not checkers,
Mm-hmm.
and because I knew the game is chess, not checkers, I know that sometimes the judicial system will give people a symbolic victory to make them feel good, but then later on do something where they let a guy like Harvey Weinstein off on a technicality because With a guy like Harvey Weinstein, yes, when you have to look at the month the conviction was in, March, which was Women's History Month, and this was all about pacifying the feminists of the Me Too movement, giving them that win. And in the short term, but in the long term, they're going to use technical errors in the trial in order to get your Harvey Weinstein's conviction overturned. And then possibly after that, instead of going for another trial, say they can't do it due to lack of evidence.
Right. Well, yeah, one of the things that definitely he has, right when he was convicted, I saw that his attorneys had already filed the appeal.
Yeah.
So it was going to be appealed no matter what. And he was only convicted on 2 out of the 5 charges. And the most severe he wasn't convicted on. But the main thing I found with this Me Too movement, speaking as an attorney, is that there is no due process anymore, in particular when these things go to trial, like when you look at Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby, the evidence there is not overwhelming. It's actually underwhelming for with all these things. And even when you listen to the testimony, it seemed like they had a relationship with these men more than anything.
That's the thing that I noticed with a lot of those cases myself. And I'm not an attorney. People say I should be an attorney, but when I look at the evidence, there is no due process. And that's one of the most troubling things about the Bill Cosby conviction for me, is because, like Plessy versus Ferguson and the Dred Scott case, we've gone from this interpretation of law from going from due process under the law and innocent until proven guilty to this standard of trust and believe. And that was the standard that Klansmen used to lynch black people with. But to have that as the legal standard and law of the land is a dangerous one, because these women can come in here with just an allegation and practically have a man imprisoned based on that allegation. So I look at that as a very dangerous precedent. And the Weinstein conviction actually cements that trust and belief as a standard of the law of the land. And we are in for a bad legal precedent if that thing is allowed to stand as the law of the land, because any woman can come out here with a claim from 10, 15, 20, 25 years later. And again, that violates our Constitution and our state laws, which say there's due process under the law, which you have to have the evidence that proves within a reasonable doubt that a person has committed this crime, 1. And 2, you have to have a statute of limitations, because if you want to get justice, is supposed to be where this person can have a right to a speedy trial. And if this person has not gone out here to get justice in an expedient manner, then we have to listen to their claim and see that there's some sort of credibility issue as related to it.
Well, yeah, most definitely credibility is an issue, but that thing with Cosby did not take place.
No, it didn't.
If anytime you get Janice Dickerson on a witness stand and testifying, we know that she's a known cokehead and liar, and the prosecution was desperate. And the prosecutor in that case, Shawn, he campaigned on getting Bill Cosby to begin with.
And to me, that was a clear case of bias. He should not have even been on the case, because
it was an ethical violation as well.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Attorneys have to be very careful with our advertisement. In fact, in Louisiana, because of I don't know if you've ever, there's a famous attorney down here called Morris Bart. I don't know if you've probably never heard of him, but Morris Bart is very known, a big attorney here in the South, in New Orleans in particular. And when they had commercials of him, with mentioning words like promise and guarantee with all his personal injury suits from car accidents, the Supreme Court had to step in and say, no, you guys got to make sure you don't say things like that, because the public will believe anything you say, because our services are to the public as lawyers. Yeah. So we're very careful with that. The other thing too, and the main thing, what I see with the case is that the prosecutor, I'm sorry, not the original prosecutor, who was Bruce Castor, had made a guarantee to Bill Cosby that there would be no more charges. There would not be any charges. He released a press statement to that effect, and he told that to Cosby's attorneys, and they had the proof of that, which was the reason why Bill Cosby subsequently had to go and give deposition, because in a civil matter, you don't have a Fifth Amendment right to self-incrimination in civil matters, only in criminal. So he gives this deposition, which tended to incriminate himself, but he did so at the promise of this prosecutor. And yet, this judge, Stephen O'Neill, allowed this bullshit, I'm just going to say it, of a trial to continue despite the motions that were filed by Bill Cosby. They also filed a motion to recuse the judge because they found out that his wife had received donations or worked in part with groups to get rid of Bill Cosby's doctorates, his degrees from various universities. I always wondered, did they ever give the money back if they revoked a degree, because he was very big on donations to colleges and universities, in particular HBCUs. And the other thing, too, that I noticed as well was that when you had the protesters out there for Cosby that are right there on the porch of the steps in view of the jury, that also could influence the juries as well. And I don't believe Weinstein's case had that many protesters out there. I think that was more controlled. And I don't know if you were you at the trial with Weinstein, or are you just...
I was aware of it, and yeah, there were silence breakers, so-called silence breakers, which were part of the Me Too movement there in the first days, but later on they were gone. But with Cosby's trial, they were there every day. And when I look at that whole Cosby trial, there were just so many judicial errors in that whole trial that the whole trial just needs to be completely overturned. I mean, from the judge's bias, clear bias, the prosecutor who ran to convict Bill Cosby, there was just so much bias there that I look at that whole trial, and the whole trial, it was just a travesty of criminal justice. When you look at our Constitution and you look at all of the due process that was violated for Bill Cosby, he did not get his civil rights in this case. He did not get his Fourth Amendment and Sixth Amendment rights to a speedy trial or a process of due process under the law or a jury of his peers. I mean, just complete violations of our U.S. Constitution and clear malice of forethought from this prosecutor, who I see it had malice of forethought in prosecuting him because he said he was running on that. He brought in witnesses based on hearsay evidence like Janice Dickinson. So the trial it's one that should have been overturned or should be overturned ASAP as I see it, because it's just a complete travesty of justice overall, complete railroading, where an innocent man was proven guilty before he even went to trial. And it was all done basically because all of these people had an agenda to get him to make this black man pay for a crime he did not commit.
And the media played a huge role in it as well, for sure, because they basically were the ones that were feeding into this, oh, Cosby confessed when he really didn't. I've actually read the deposition. And on top of that, if you look at an old Supreme Court case, it was called Shepard versus Maxwell, about a doctor that was accused of murdering his wife, and he was found guilty. The Supreme Court had to overturn the actual conviction because the press and the media there hampered with the right to a fair and impartial trial, even the judge saying he was guilty at the time that took place, which is what I hope Bill Cosby's attorneys have raised, and I'm sure Harvey Weinstein's attorneys, I'm just talking about Weinstein, and I don't really support Harvey Weinstein, but I still think that as an attorney, the process was not followed. I've heard stories about Harvey Weinstein being a jerk and being, if you want to use sexual favors for women, he got sexual favors from women to advance their careers. So you can tell them things like that. But I don't equate that with a child that's being abused by their teacher or priest, in the sense that that person, that woman who has sex with a movie mogul to advance their careers, made a business decision, not rape. When you're talking of rape, I think of someone, like the women who were raped by that cop out in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I think it was Holtzclaw. I think of that. I think of Jerry Sandusky. Those are situations of rape and abuse, but not someone trying to advance their career to be in the next James Bond film.
Yeah, there's a clear line between sexual violence and a consensual sexual act. And what we're having with this Me Too movement is they want to be able to blur these lines and be able to make the definition wherever they want that to be. But in our legal system, we have to have a clear line so that people don't abuse the criminal justice system like some of these people in the Me Too movement have been trying to do. Because what a lot of these women in the Me Too movement have been trying to do is blur these lines so that they can make these definitions be whatever they want them to be based on their feelings. And then also what they want to do is try these cases in the court of public opinion based on those feelings. And that's not a legal standard anybody should want to stand for, because your son, your brothers, your fathers could be a victim in this situation.
Oh, yeah.
And the big problem is that we need due process, because with due process, we get a fair and balanced legal system where cases are tried based on facts, they're tried on evidence, and they're tried on those facts and evidence in front of a jury of their peers and an objective judge who makes sure that the trial is impartial. And if we don't have that, then our whole country is going to fall completely apart, because we're going to have women based on their own feelings over a bad date or something going wrong, or some transaction like they were doing with Harvey Weinstein going wrong, or just their life not going the way they wanted, coming back 5, 10, 15 years later and looking to destroy a man's life based on their feelings. And again, our courts are not based on feelings. They were supposed to be based on the facts as related to the law.
They try to make a comeback when their face don't work and they had too much Botox.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Yeah.
That's what many of the women of the Me Too movement are. They're like middle-aged, older women. And what they want to do is make their careers get a second chance by making these allegations, because they know that controversy, especially sexual controversy, sells. But what happens is it does damage to our legal system, and it does damage as related to other men getting their legal right to a speedy trial, a fair trial, and the whole case of innocent until proven guilty, which is the most important thing. A man has a right to be innocent until proven guilty under our Constitution, because we don't know what things are unless we take this case to trial. And we're supposed to try that case in a court of law, not on the media with the public opinion like they did with Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein. Yes, people have the opinion that Harvey Weinstein is a jerk, but you have to substantiate that in the court of law based with your hard evidence based on fact. And you have to have that evidence that shows a timeline that can show us beyond a reasonable doubt that this individual perpetrated some sort of sexual crime or sexual violence.
75% of the United States would be in jail if we had a law outlawing jerks.
Yeah.
Because we got a lot of jerks, but I mean, yeah, that's not a crime. And yeah, most definitely. And matter of fact, one of the women that testified as well, her name was Lena Lashala. She was I think one of the few black women that went against Bill Cosby. She testified that Bill Cosby never raped her, but that he humped her leg while she was knocked out, that he humped her leg like a dog. And that was allowed at the trial. And what was interesting, too, that I found out was that this woman was not only a convicted prostitute, but she was also convicted for falsifying a police report. So you had that being allowed. Now, Tom Mesereau, who was Bill Cosby's attorney at the second trial, because you remember this went to trial twice. The first ended in a mistrial. I have spoken with both him and Kathleen Bliss, and they have told me that out of all the and you know, Kathleen Bliss is a former prosecutor, state's attorney, and between them they have almost 65 years of experience. They said, I've never seen a case that was so biased than the Cosby case. So I'm hoping that he will get due process. We're trying to see about whether he can get out of jail now with this coronavirus thing, being that he's elderly. And the other thing that should be taken in consideration is his, aside from his age and his blindness, is also the fact that he's never had any priors. He never had any prior convictions. His philanthropic work. He's also a veteran.
All of those things should be taken into consideration for him because he really should not be in jail in his elderly condition. I mean, he should be either in a hospital or he should be at home. So I really think they should be thinking about releasing him because 80-year-old man who's legally blind, and especially with a lot of these prisons having this coronavirus going on, yeah, he needs to be released, but he also needs to be released. I mean, I thought his first appeal shouldn't have been turned down because there were just so many technical
Well,
errors in
they were
that trial.
prejudiced in that Court of Appeals case. From my sources that told me that were present, they said from the minute the attorney spoke, they kept interrupting them. Whereas when the prosecution side, the state side had their opportunity, they actually helped the state answer questions, which is something that typically doesn't happen. Judges and justices are supposed to be fair and impartial. They can't help one side or the other. Granted, when you're convicted, it is on and you appeal it, the burden is on the appellant to prove that some type of judicial error took place. But nevertheless, they shouldn't have done that. Uh, Also, the fact that deposition was made public should have never even been released. It was sealed and it was settled. And that's another thing. Andrea Constant, with her nasty self, got $3.5 million from this case. She got money from him. So what was the purpose of reopening this and putting him on trial?
Yeah, there was a credibility issue with her because she took a settlement and then went, as I see it, that's like a double indemnity in some ways because she took a settlement and then she went to go prosecute the same man she took a settlement from.
Well, yeah. Well, the only reason why I never beat double jeopardy because with double jeopardy that only applies
I
when
know
a criminal,
to criminal matters.
right, when a criminal matter starts and the prosecute, and once the trial starts, if he got acquitted, then you can't re-prosecute him again. But what happened here again is this prosecutor uh, ran on his campaign on getting Bill Cosby. He was finally elected, and the day before the statute of limitations were to expire on this case, he came down with an indictment. And this had been almost 14 years after, which is the statute of limitations in uh, Pennsylvania on indecent sexual assault. Now, many people falsely call Dr. Cosby a rapist when that wasn't a rape charge. What that was just a groping charge that he had.
Yeah.
And normally, that's something that can be set either he pleads guilty or if he's even found guilty, they don't send him to jail 3 to 10 years and register him as a sex offender. The man is 80 years old. So there was clearly bias in there.
Yeah, it's definite bias. And they were trying to destroy his reputation. They're just trying to destroy his name. And there was clear malice of forethought with the whole prosecution, the whole conviction. I mean, I could just see all the numerous judicial errors. And with the state of Pennsylvania, we're seeing some corruption here. So I'm thinking that possibly is you're going to have to take the federal courts to come in and
Right.
really deal with this case because there clearly are numerous judicial errors here. And I believe for Kevin Steele, he needs to be brought up on charges and possibly disbarred because he has violated his oath as an attorney and all of the codes of being an attorney.
I think Judge O'Neill has to be removed from the bench.
Yeah, he needs to be removed as well.
Because if he can do that to someone who has money, just think of the young black men who don't have money that go in their court.
Yeah. He would railroad many young black men just for the sake of it.
And what I've seen from this Cosby case, Shawn, I don't know if you feel the same way, but once he got convicted, did it look like there was a whole row of black entertainers that got their wake-up call, as Paul Mooney said?
There were some that got the wake-up call, but a lot of them still thought they were individuals until they started picking them off like R. Kelly and Cuba Gooding Jr. And that's when some black entertainers started to wake up and say, there's a war on not only black entertainers, but black men in general, because what they want to do is use this Me Too movement to go after black men
Right.
and use it as a way to, as I see it, the modern day lynching, where they can have a woman make an allegation of a sex crime against a black man and then try him in the court of public opinion and then use that to railroad that black man through the criminal justice system.
Right. Well, I saw Morgan Freeman right after convicted. He was accused, but by CNN didn't go anywhere. And then I saw Cuba Gooding Jr., Jamie Foxx, Chris Brown after he
Yeah.
signed that RCA deal, and Cuba Gooding Jr.'s trial is actually going to be starting. Well, it was supposed to be, I believe, in April, but I guess that's going to be pushed back with this coronavirus thing that's going on. But he's on trial right now for groping, and
Yeah.
are going to be on trial. And on top of that, of course, you had Russell Simmons being accused by Oprah, but well, not by Oprah, but by several women. But Oprah had been doing a documentary on Russell, like she tried to do with the Leaving Neverland on
Yeah.
Michael Jackson. Yeah. What I gotta ask you is, what do you think is the deal with Oprah and Gayle King? Do you think they have some animosity to black men?
They've always had animosity against black men. I mean, Oprah has had a mad on against black men since the 1980s. She's always had issue with black men. I mean, if you look at her earlier episodes of the Oprah Winfrey Show, she goes out of her way to demonize black men. And in her own productions, like Women of Brewster Place, and movies that she does on her Oprah Winfrey Presents, like The Wedding and The Rise of Watching God, she's always looking for a way to make the black man appear to be incompetent, lazy, incapable of being a leader or a head of household. So she's always had a vendetta against black men. And what she wants to do now is further push that agenda of going after black men with things like Leaving Neverland and that attempt at a Russell Simmons documentary. But what's happening now is more and more black people are becoming aware of it thanks to new black media. And finally, we're getting some pushback against her misandristic and black feminist agenda against black men. So we're starting to see some pushback. For over 30 years, she was out here demonizing the image of black men, maligning the image of black men. But what's happening now is, thanks to us having new black media out here, we're starting to see this pushback. And now she's not able to push these agendas the way she was able to push, like she was back in the 80s when she had complete control over media platforms.
We didn't have a voice back then,
No.
like we do now. And so whenever she said something, everyone took it, to heart. Everyone, followed her because she had all of this money and she was on prime time. I remember my mom watching her. Honestly, I couldn't stand the woman. I haven't found anything entertaining about Oprah per se.
Yeah.
I know that I was happy that some of her black women were successful and so forth. But then when I really noticed about Oprah was how she never even had rappers on her show and how she treated Ice Cube. I don't know if you remember.
I actually remember watching that when she expressed great contempt for him. She has great contempt for every black man that she's had on the show.
Well, when she had Ludacris on, she was real ugly with him, and Ludacris was there to promote the movie Crash with the other actors, and he noticed, she was nice to them, but had nothing really much but contempt to say to him. But with Ice Cube, what I was getting at was there was a documentary series that Ice Cube did back in 2005, 2006 called Black or White. And they allowed the families who basically played a black family plays a white family, and a white family plays a black family. It only lasted one season, I believe, but nevertheless, they had the families on, but she didn't invite Ice Cube, even though he created it. So I thought that was a huge slap in the face. But then you have Scale King with Kobe Bryant's situation. We're coming up. And then Snoop Dogg calling her the funky dog-headed bitch. What did you think of what happened with that and Snoop Dogg's apology afterwards.
Well, I thought that the way she handled things was extremely egregious, but what I found to be sad was Snoop Dogg not standing up for himself. I mean, when I look at that whole situation, it just showed me how weak your Snoop Dogg was, because he was in the right to call her out for what she had said, because for her to ask that question was completely inappropriate during a time when Lisa Leslie was mourning her friend. To ask that question, that was a violation of basic journalistic integrity, because if a journalist is supposed to approach things based on the facts, and they're supposed to remain objective, and no matter how you're feeling as a journalist, you're supposed to remain focused on the facts. Because, like, for example, when I write books like The Man Crisis, even though I am really focused on men's issues, I have to look at the other side of the argument in order to write a book like The Man Crisis. So I have to remain objective because I want to present the facts to people. But with that question, she had gone from being objective to interjecting her opinion. And that was extremely inappropriate from a journalistic perspective, because when we look at the facts of that whole case with Kobe Bryant and that woman in that Colorado hotel, we see that there was no criminal charges filed by the police there. And to call Kobe Bryant a rapist when there was no sexual violence perpetrated in that incident, that shows that she was out to malign Kobe Bryant's name and not looking to ask a journalistic question as related to the integrity. But what I saw with Snoop Dogg was him backing down was the worst thing of all, because he was in the right. He should have stood up for himself, and he should have stood up as a man, because there's nothing that you need to apologize for. What he did was he caved in because he feared losing support from his Hollywood slave masters, and he feared that those Hollywood slave masters wouldn't fund his projects. So he wanted to just try to keep getting his daily bread from those Hollywood slave masters, not understanding that there are some things that are more important than bread alone. A man has to stand up for himself if he knows he's right, because when a man stands up, he becomes somebody people respect because he has the integrity to stand for what he believes in. And your Snoop Dogg compromised his integrity by going on that Jada Pinkett, and then allowing those women to verbally abuse him and literally castrate
Jada
him.
Pinkett was full of shit.
Yeah, she and I watched them. I watched the whole Red Table Talk, and they basically ganged up on that man. They had Yana Van Zant. They had somebody else there. They had
Jamel Hill did a video clip. Yeah.
I mean, it was a total assassination of a black man, and it was one of the most disgusting things I saw, trying to shame this man for standing up like a man. And basically, this was done so that they could say that if a black man stands up for himself, we will have these black female enforcers break this man down, because the people who control the black community are black women. But these aren't the black women who are out to look out for the black community. They're basically out to keep promoting the same narratives of white supremacy. They're basically the enforcers out here, and they were looking to enforce their policy on Snoop Dogg. And that's what I saw in that whole incident.
Right. Definitely. And the thing that Snoop Dogg said that really pissed me off was the fact that he stated he talked to his mama about his language and so forth. And I'm like, well, where's your mama been for the last 30 years? Because all I remember is you calling women bitches and hoes. I mean, in your rap lyrics, on top of that, you came to the music awards with 2 women on a leash. So I respect what Snoop Dogg initially said, what he said to Gayle King. I was applauding him. I understood directly where it comes from, because this was also his friend as well.
Yes.
He and Kobe Bryant were friends, and what pissed people off that a lot of people keep forgetting, it wasn't the fact that she brought up the Colorado incident so much as it was the follow-up after Lisa Leslie answered the question. Because when Lisa Leslie answered, well, I never saw him, and I've been around men I know have male friends who are more aggressive, and he was never like that. And then Gail says, "Well, Lisa, you wouldn't see it." Well, if you know so much, Gail, why would you ask that? And the thing was that she got caught. She tried to play it off like CBS was at fault for editing the video, the interview, to make it look like that's the only question she asked. But when you looked at the whole 5 minute clip, like I did,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there was nothing wrong. She made it sound like it was a whole hour interview she did. It was only 5 minutes and 48 seconds, if I'm not mistaken, of her talking about Kobe Bryant. So what mistake was made?
There wasn't any mistake. It was clear malice of forethought with that question, and she thought she could slip it through. But Lisa Leslie, because she had good critical thinking skills, caught the question, and she couldn't get out from under it. And what she wanted to do after that was deflect to CBS and try to make it look like it was their fault, but it was all on her. And she was the one responsible because she knew she wanted to ask that question, and she knew she wanted to try to find a way to tarnish Kobe Bryant's legacy because, again, she and Oprah have had issues with black men, and they're always looking to demonize a black man. But this time they got caught because it was just really egregious to really speak negatively about this man and bring this up in a case where this man has passed away. He lost his daughter as well,
Right,
and it
right,
just was completely inappropriate to ask that question when this man is not here to defend himself. It was just one of the most craven things to do and one of the most unethical things I ever saw a journalist do, because I know for a fact, as a writer, you just don't ask certain things or present certain things because they're just not appropriate, and they're
right.
just not as related to journalistic integrity, because a journalist is supposed to remain objective, and a journalist is supposed to focus on things as related to finding fact.
Absolutely, absolutely. And about that red table talk, because I saw your review on it, I flipped when you said the word sapphires to describe the three co-hosts of the red table talk. I'm like, sapphires, brother. You use language I ain't never heard of in a long time.
Well, I studied the all of the caricatures from the Jim Crow Museum. I mean, about 11 years ago, when I was really starting to build my publishing house, I ran into the website for the Jim Crow Museum, and they showed all of the racist caricatures that were presented in media. And a lot of people know about the coon. A lot of people know about the mammy. A lot of people know about the black brute, but they don't know about the sapphire. And the sapphire is the stereotype of this loud, obnoxious black woman who has the neck rolling, eye snapping black woman. And what she wants to do is dominate the black man and emasculate the black man. And that's been something that we've seen throughout history in shows like Amos and Andy, Sanford and Son with Aunt Esther, shows like Florence from the Jeffersons. And we've even seen it in recent shows like Pam from Martin, and even in other shows like Everybody Hates Chris with the mother. The Sapphire
Same
is,
actress, Tashina
yeah,
Arnold.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's mastered playing the Sapphire, but the Sapphire is designed to show that she has these masculine traits. It's really about trying to show that the black woman is this masculine type female and that she's bullying, domineering, loud, obnoxious. There's really a lot of negative traits being presented to the black woman so that she can appear to be less attractive than white women who are often presented as soft, submissive, and docile. The black woman is presented as hostile. So I saw that on the Jim Crow Museum website.
I was just putting your books up so people can go on Amazon. Go ahead and finish, Shawn. I didn't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt you.
but the Jim Crow Museum website, that was on Ferris State University. That was part of my research for years, and I will drop a link to it right here in the StreamYard so you can take a look at it. But I collected all of those web pages, and I used that in my research for much of my work, like ISIS Imitation of Life, and I used that as the foundation for my novel Spellbound, the whole page about the tragic mulatto. But it's a website with a lot of information that will show you the foundations of a lot of the racist concepts, a lot of the racist constructs, and a lot of the stereotypes that are we think are normal, but these are ideas that came from racist and white supremacists about black people. And a lot of us, if we're not aware of them, we'll be buying into these stereotypes and believing that these caricaturized images and ideas are supposed to be the way we're supposed to behave.
Very interesting as well. Yeah, I definitely will check that out. I know that we said on Esther. Yeah, I remember on Esther was always berating Fred on the show. So the Lawanda Page actress,
Yeah,
in real life, she was a fellow comedian and close friend of Rick Fox, childhood friends.
yeah,
They grew up together. Yeah. So yeah, but I remember Martin and so forth. Yeah, and speaking of which, since you said you're a screenwriter, I'm glad uh, you brought up Tashina Arnold because I'm thinking about the '90s, back in the day when you had the black sitcoms, the late '80s and '90s that came out, like on NBC. Obviously, you had the Cosby Show, and because of the Cosby Show's success, you started to see like a different world, and then they had 227 and a few other shows, Amen, and on Fox they got their start based off of black shows like In Living Color and Martin and Living Single, and I know they had the drama New York Undercover, which in the '90s became Fox's answer to NBC's Must TV CTV Thursday. Why do you? And then subsequently, WB has all the black shows like The Parenthood and Wayne's Brothers and Smart Guy and Sister Sister and so forth. Long story short, why do you all those shows get canceled roughly? Why do you think they don't have those type of TV shows anymore? Do you think that they just are there to build those networks up and just guard them like slaves?
well, the reason why we didn't have those shows anymore is because many of those networks, they were just using black people primarily as a springboard to get their audience. And once they got their audience and they started to see that they could get access to these white viewers, then they wanted to abandon the black audience. Because I remember on Fox when they started out with a lot of black shows like Martin and Living Color, Living Single, and then all of a sudden when they started to see a lot of their white shows starting to take off, and then around 2000 with American Idol, they practically dropped everything black. And the same thing with WB when they started to see Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Dawson's Creek starting to get popular. That's when they wanted to start dumping their black shows. And they only wanted to use black people as a buffer group to build up their network, build up their viewership. And then once they got their shows with a predominantly white cast, then they wanted to abandon those shows. But the whole thing is that if it wasn't for those shows, these small netlets wouldn't have any foundation at all.
No, without question. Especially with Martin on Fox. I mean, I know at that time Fox had was it Married with Children and The Simpsons,
Yeah,
and when Living Color came on, which was what 1990, they really broke the mold because they had a predominantly black cast,
yeah,
and compared to Saturday Night Live, and I've never even laughed at one thing at SNL recently. Maybe with the only time I've ever watched an SNL episode was when Eddie Murphy recently hosted it, and to be honest, he's the reason why that show is still on the air.
yeah.
Uh,
He
but
practically saved that show. They were going to cancel it with the
right,
original cast.
right, and NBC actually was going to go bankrupt had it not been for the Cosby Show
Yeah, if it wasn't
because
for Eddie Murphy and Bill Cosby, NBC was, because I remember growing up, I was a kid back then, and they were struggling badly until Brandon Tartikoff decided to bring Bill Cosby in, and he practically saved the network. And they had Eddie Murphy, he was holding up Saturday Night Live, but when they brought Bill Cosby in, he practically saved the entire network.
yeah, yeah. They were getting their ass kicked by CBS and Dallas and Magnum PI
Yeah,
and all of those TV shows. And yeah, and the only, I guess, highest rated show they had at the time before Cosby was what, a different strokes.
Yeah, there was Different Strokes and possibly Knight
Practical
Rider.
Knight Rider, yeah. But I think Knight Rider came at the same time as Cosby, 85,
No, he was a little earlier. It's like 82,
83.
82, 87. It went from 82 to 87.
Okay.
And because I used to watch it all the time. So
That's a little bit before me. I was born in 86, so I can remember late 89. I do remember the Cosby Show, definitely on Thursdays, and A Different World, but no, I don't remember Knight Rider too much.
I was born in 73. So I was
Oh, okay.
watching Knight Rider as a kid. So I,
Yeah,
I watched Knight Rider every Sunday when it came on. It was on Fridays at first. And I remember when they moved it was on Sundays and then they moved to Fridays. And it was one of those shows that was actually keeping NBC alive. And then when the Cosby Show came on, it practically made them a contender again.
and the 18 too.
Yeah,
Yeah, Mr. T. Right,
yeah.
right.
But
Yeah,
they were getting destroyed. I remember when they were running Facts of Life and Different Strokes on multiple nights because they had nothing to fill those nights.
right. The other show, all other show I think of they had too was Give Me a Break with Neil
Yeah.
Carter. Yeah, but yeah, right about that. Yeah. So by getting back to your publishing, do you work with other artists? Excuse me, artists. Yeah,
I
work with
haven't.
other authors.
The only other author I've ever worked with was Lawrence Cherry, who was a good friend of mine. But usually, I just do my own work from here on in because I don't have the infrastructure to deal with having to pay royalties. That's why I don't deal with other authors. But I used to deal with Lawrence Cherry, and we had a pretty good business relationship. But I do, if I could get better sales, I would deal with other authors.
Sure. Ooh, yeah. And did you ever try, like, was there ever a thought in your mind that you were going to be working with another, like, you wanted to put your book in a publishing company, or you say, you know what, no, I'm going to stick with my own publishing because I want to control my own stuff?
I would. The only reason why I would want to do work with another publisher is to get distribution to the retail, like Barnes and Noble. But I would rather stay independent because that way, I get to control my content. Because that's one of the reasons why I became an independent publisher is because I wanted to control my content. Because when I would submit books like The Temptation of John Haynes, many of these white females who control the publishing industry, they were really nasty when I would go out here and present those types of stories, like the books like The Temptation of John Haynes, or I go out here when I present a book like A Recipe for Success, because they don't want to see any narratives that show you a positive image of Black people, nor do they want you to see any sort of story that presents narratives that run counter to their ideas about Black people.
Right. I agree. I agree. And definitely, as far as hitting those markets with Barnes and Nobles, when I had my book, Katrina, what I did was I was living in Baton Rouge at the time. So I would go to the managers there and just visit them over and over again, and till they would talk to me, and I would ask them to do book signings and so forth on that day. So what happened was I would bring my family out, and my family from Lafayette, the Alexanders loved them, my cousins. They came out, and let's say I had 20 books that I was going to sell or there to sign. I sold, and Barnes and Noble would actually put them in the nonfiction section. I sold out all of those books that day, just to
Oh,
let them know. I said, "Oh wow, you did great. We want to order some more." And same thing with when I went to different Barnes and Nobles. I'm talking about in Lafayette,
yeah.
which is about 2 hours from 2.5 hours from New Orleans. Baton Rouge. I went here on the West Bank. So yeah, it is a hustle. So you gotta hustle. That's one
Yeah.
thing. You're doing that, my brother. I'm real proud of you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I took my hustle online. I was going to the stores, but I just ran into a lot of resistance. I was going to the vendors in Harlem, but then I decided after I did a book fair and I got next to no sales, I decided to go take it back online, and that's where I started to really start to build some momentum. And then I decided that's why I wanted to do the YouTube channel, because I said I had come as far as I could with the Facebook and the Twitter, and I needed people to see my face so that they could have a face to associate with the product. Because when you have a face to associate with the product and you get to know the author, then you want to take a chance on the book. So that's one of the reasons why I go out here and I make the videos, and I go out here and I talk about different subjects. It's because I want people to get to know me. I want them to get to know the mission of that, my mission as an author. I want them to get to know the man behind the product, so that they can feel comfortable about that man behind the product, so that if they feel comfortable with me, they will go out here and pick up my books and know that if there's a man who believes these things, has these values, they can trust that the content he's going to produce is going to be top quality.
No doubt, no doubt. So what advice would you give to young authors, or people that, not even if they're young, just people that want to write and put their own book out? How would they do that?
Well, the first thing I would give as advice to an author is you're going to need a really thick skin to be in this business, because you're going to get a lot of resistance from people. I mean, when I showed my family all about Marilyn, they got upset because I put a nude on the cover. And then they also got upset because it was a screenplay. I get a lot of heat from people regarding the covers of my ISIS series books, because some people have an issue with the character being so-called light-skinned. And you're going to need a thick skin to deal with a lot of people out there, because they do not see what you're trying to do. They don't see what your story is all about. And you're going to have to keep going and persevering in the face of all that resistance. And the thing that's going to keep you motivated is your passion for what you're doing. You have to really believe in your work when you're out here, because that's the thing that's going to keep you motivated in the face of all these people who are naysaying you, nitpicking you, even mocking you. Because I remember when I was drawing my hand-drawn covers for ISIS series books, like my original ISIS series books, before I hired Bill Walker to do the designs, people were putting my books on lousy book cover lists. They were making fun of me. And I just had to persevere in the face of all of that and say, look, I believe in what I'm writing. I believe in my mission of creating positive stories about the African American experience and diversifying the Black book market. And I have to go out here because this means something to me. And I can't worry about people who complain, because when I found out, when I went out here, a lot of people were making fun of me for the hand-drawn covers. When I hired Bill Walker to design covers like this, they were still complaining. So I had to still keep persevering in the face of people making fun of my work, because I believed in my work. And I know that there were people out there who want this, because people all over the world, they pick up ISIS series books. They would pick up, John Haynes series books. And I'm doing it because I love writing those stories, and I do it because I believe in those stories. And that's something that's the advice I give them is you need to have a thick skin. You have to persevere, and you have to do this because you believe in it. This is why you're investing your time in sitting at that keyboard for hours on end, writing chapter day after day, putting together story after story. You're doing this because you believe in it. So you can't let anybody take your dream away. And even when people are speaking against it, you have to be for yourself, and you have to push all of that negativity down and focus on the positive, which is you getting towards finishing your book. And it doesn't really matter if it sells 1 copy or 100 copies. It's about you getting your story on paper, and you finishing what you wanted to do and saying what you wanted to say in that story.
Wow. Powerful words, my friend. Powerful words. And most definitely, whatever you want to do in life, and I say this to my audience, you got to go for it and not let anyone be against you. Because I even have resistance on some things that I want to do from family members, people that will shoot ideas down that I have. And you're not going to be able to please those people. Jesus couldn't please everyone, even after he healed the high servant's ear. They down him and killed him. So, you can't convince them. If he couldn't convince them, then you're not going to convince others. But you got to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
And I definitely thank you for your time, man, and for being here. And what I want to share, Shawn, with the world, with you, since we were talking about the Cosby situation earlier, our sister, I don't know if you know, our fellow YouTuber, Nicole from Nicole's View. I don't know if you're familiar with her channel.
I am quite familiar with her channel. I have watched a couple of her videos.
Okay, yeah, she's a good friend, and we actually she sent this to me. I'll share with you. It's the office of the governor's office in Pennsylvania, Mr. Tom Wolf. Uh, we have the contact information to the governor of Pennsylvania from his fax number, is also his mailing address. We would like people to comment and tell the judge that we're concerned about Dr. Cosby and that he should be on house release from now on for his sentence, especially in light of the coronavirus scare. So I'll share that with you, some information later. If you feel free to leave a comment box to the governor or fax him or write him any way that you see, and share it with your subscribers as well. Uh, it's good that we can come together and have these discussions. Oh, one more question I want to ask you. I was just waiting to see if you were going to do a video on this. So you're going to be talking about the Andrew Gillum situation and the so-called letter that was written on his behalf by I forgot the guy's name, but you're familiar, obviously, with what happened with Andrew Gillum and how News One said, well, not News One, but they quoted an article from a gentleman asking for his forgiveness, asking for us black men to support him.
I am quite familiar with that letter that he made. I recently watched a video by Chris Miller where he talked about that. Black Opinion talked about it. And I was planning on doing my own video later next week regarding that situation.
Sure.
But when I look at Andrew Gillum, I think we have an individual who he shouldn't be looking for black people to support him. What he needs to do is just come out of the closet, because when I was writing my book, A Recipe for Success, and I did the research on these down low men, this guy is a textbook down low man. And what it is that he's in denial about his homosexuality. And he needs to do what former New Jersey Governor Jim McGreevey did when he resigned from office. When Jim McGreevey found himself caught into a scandal, he just came out and just said he was a gay American, resigned from office, and he moved on. And what your Andrew Gillum needs to do is just admit that he is a gay American and he needs to move on, because it's out of the closet. All of the behaviors he participated in. I have several LGBT viewers who watch my channel, and they themselves said that, look, he is a gay man and his behaviors were right in line with everything they knew what was going on. So what he's trying to do is he's digging a deeper grave for himself. And I'm going to go in depth on that in a video later this week.
Right. I think another thing too is that these black, I've seen some of the reviews from some people, is that they want us as black men to always have the back of guys like Andrew Gillum or Stacey Abrams because they're a black face, but yet they do very little for the black community, have no black agenda, uh, and we just support them randomly just because they look like us. It doesn't work that way anymore. I think if you did this in the 1960s and 70s when we were starting to get into political positions, uh, you know, those black men, when you look at Dutch Morial, who's the first black mayor of New Orleans, or Maynard Jackson, the first black mayor of Atlanta, and Harold Washington up in Chicago, they actually did things for the community. They actually put, like Maynard rebuilding that airport in Atlanta. He made sure 80% of African Americans got the contract bids to do those. But your Gillums and so forth, Abrams, the most that the Democratic Party that I see they're pushing is a pro-LGBT feminist and immigration agenda. And there is no black agenda on the table, which is why many people last year stood home from the presidential elections, and I'm not shocked if many people stood home for this election.
Yeah. The whole thing is that they have no black agendas, but they're taking black support for granted. They think that their black skin is enough to qualify them. And now you have black voters after the failure of Obama saying we want more from our candidates than their black skin. We want actual change. We want actual policies. We want actual tangibles. And guys like Andrew Gillum, they just don't cut it anymore because they're not offering any tangibles. All they're offering is just their black skin. And for black people, that's just not enough anymore. So when I look at your Andrew Gillum and many of these other black politicians, if they don't have a black agenda, then we have no interest in voting for them. It's like just like Professor Black Truth says in many of his videos
Right.
that no tangibles, no black vote, no black agenda, no black
A
vote.
black vote. Yeah, Judge Joe Brown has said the same thing as well. I talk to him regularly about that. And, Obama, his main thing is LGBTQ. That was his legacy.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, I say go back to that 1% of the population and get your votes, but you're not going to win.
that's true. Yeah, but that's true. But I have a question. We have a question from Tyree Dominique. He's a fellow Facebook friend and Twitter follower. He's following my page. What's up, man? He says, "Hi guys. Would it be seen as a human rights violation to not allow Bill Cosby to finish his sentence in house arrest in the time of the COVID-19 virus?" I guess I'll answer that, Shawn. Unfortunately, I don't think it would be a human rights issue. Although we may not like it, states do have the authority to decide what they do with their prison population or not, uh, amid this, because they can always make the argument that, well, we have elderly already that are in jail and so forth, so should I take every one of them out? Although, granted, I do believe given someone's age and condition and so forth, perhaps they should not be there. I don't know if it rises to the level of a human rights issue under the law.
I don't know if it goes to that standard either, but I just
Well,
think that it's just an ethical thing to do, just something that any ethical human being would want to do because a lot of the elderly are the most vulnerable to this virus. And it would just be show malice of forethought to leave Bill Cosby in an environment where he could be infected with this virus and it could cost him his life.
I agree. I want to ask you, Shawn, since you're very opinionated, do you get a lot of flack from friends or family members about when you speak out against the Me Too movement or any female friends that get mad?
No, in most cases, people actually support me when I speak against this Me Too movement. Even women support it because they understand that a lot of these women in the Me Too movement are out to abuse not only men's rights, but they're also out to abuse women's rights. And they're also just out here, really, they're not out here to stop what they call alleged sexual assaults and sexual violence. It's really about them getting a cash grab from these rich men so they can be taken care of in their old age. Because for one thing I find interesting is that no, none of these women who are about this Me Too movement are going after and many of these black pastors. None of them are trying to go after other people in the community. They just want to go after these celebrities with these allegations, which shows me that it's primarily a resource grab. But most of the people who I speak to online and many of the women, even in my own family, they support the statements I make because they can see through this farce of a Me Too movement, which is all about really white women getting this bag to take care of themselves in their old age. And they can see through it because mostly the women making these allegations are women on the casting couch, side pieces, and they're not about trying to do things that are related to our legal system, like getting due process under the law, where they would go and take care of this case in an expedient manner. Their actions are always about civil court. For example, a recent case with Timothy Hutton, an actor, he had been dealing with a woman for 17 years, making these allegations, trying to get a payday out of him. And he has a whole paper trail to show that these allegations, they are false. And it's all about her getting a settlement because she wants to take this case to a civil court to get a settlement. So when people hear me make these statements in the videos, they can clearly see the facts I'm presenting because they look at the evidence presented in an objective manner, and they can come to the conclusion that this Me Too movement really is not about stopping any sort of sexual violence or stopping sexual predators. Because if they were serious, again, they would be going after all sexual predators, not just these rich men, and they would really be going after that black pastor because that black pastor is one of the deadliest predators in the neighborhood, next to the neighborhood dope man.
There's some truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that. It's funny you mentioned with Radon Shawn actually just did daughter of Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong, the actress. She had mentioned that at 15 years old, she had sex with Mick Jagger, who was obviously far older than her by the time she was 15. And apparently, she even went as further as to say and tell everyone, I don't want to make this into a Me Too thing. I consented, even though at 15, you clearly can't consent under the law.
Yeah.
She was very defensive of him, nonetheless. And we don't hear anyone going after Mick Jagger. And with all of this going on, it makes me think Hugh Hefner checked out at the right time, too. So,
well, Hugh Hefner had so many women, it wasn't funny.
right.
And
So he had women underage, too.
Yeah, he had underage women, and nobody has ever come after him with allegations. But that's because they were taken care of by the Playboy Mansion, and he had taken care of a lot of those women by giving them jobs and stuff. So that's why they didn't come after him.
Yeah, but I mean, they even saying Cosby molested one of these girls at the mansion 40 years ago, and Gloria Allred is the attorney representing this girl. And Gloria Allred basically, if there were a definition of ambulance chasing attorney, I think between her and Michael Avenatti, their picture would be right there.
Yeah, but her case is really weak because you waited 40 years. If this was an issue, you would have dealt with it back in the 1970s, and probably Hugh Hefner would have settled that out of court, and then he would have had a strong case to say, hey, you settled this out of court.
Well, the problem though with all of this too, Shawn, even in New York where you live, they've changed the law to now where I believe the victim can be at least 55 years of age. Because at one point you can bring these accusations up, the statute of limitations like a year from when the wrongful act occurred. This is about a civil suit.
Yeah.
Obviously, criminal statute of limitations are different than civil. And they've made it now if you're about 55 years of age, you can bring a civil suit forward under this new New York law, which is why Rick James has actually gotten hit with a sexual assault violation. And Rick James has been dead for 16 years, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, in California, they've also removed the statute of limitations on rape. In Nevada, I believe it was 10 years. Now they've moved it to 20. And they did all of this because of the Bill Cosby situation. And we're seeing even from non-celebrities like this brother, Albert Wilson, who is in jail in Kansas on a rape charge. I don't know if you're familiar with that story.
I did a whole video on him.
Al Wilson?
Yeah,
okay.
I did a whole video.
So you already know.
And these are some dangerous legal precedents because a lot of men, they're going to be set up because if a woman's life goes bad, she winds up in a dysfunctional state. She's going to try to revise history to make herself into a victim. And there's no evidence. So I look at this as a bad set of legal precedents because when you have people who can take the statute of limitations, take it to 10 to 20 years on these type of crimes, and there's no DNA evidence, there's no timeline, there's no hard evidence, this is going to lead to a lot of wrongful convictions, and it's going to lead to a lot of men winding up in prison for crimes that they didn't commit. So I look at this as a very dangerous set of legal precedent, almost as bad as Plessy versus Ferguson and Dred Scott. And it's basically putting men in a second-class position where they have to prove their own innocence because this woman can basically just take a story that she had from 20 years ago, revise the story to make herself out to be a victim, have no evidence, and then take that man and put him in jail. based on just on her own opinion, not on anything related to DNA evidence, not on anything that's related to timeline, not on things that's related to witnesses. And that's a very, very dangerous precedent these people are setting based on their emotions. And a lot of them, they want to try, still trying to get a Bill Cosby, but they don't see how they're getting men and messing up the rights of men in this country as related to due process.
Tyree said Gloria Allred is a criminal who will go to jail. Well, she's been doing this for years. Remember, she was the attorney that went at Michael. She obviously tried to get Michael Jackson's kids away from him after the baby dangling incident. She's also gone after Mike Tyson. She went after Tiger Woods, even though Tiger Woods was the victim of actual domestic violence dispute. But Tiger was made to be the villain out of all of it because he cheated on his wife. And his wife really should have been the one prosecuted for assault, but that didn't happen. But Gloria Allred, I mean, there's a lot of stories about her.
She sounds like a very, 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 very sick person. And it's clear
she was assaulted. She raped, and I think she's used that, I guess, as a catalyst that all men are like that. All men are rapist dogs.
But I find it interesting that she's always going after black men. It's like, I notice with a lot of feminists, they're also racist as well. So they have a deep hatred of black men for some reason. Even though white men are the ones who perpetrate these crimes against them, they always have a thing to go after black men.
Most definitely. So, Shawn, where can people reach you at if they want to buy your books, if they want to get in touch with you, give the people the information?
Okay, I'm going to put my link to all my books in the chat. So you can pick up my books on Amazon.com with this link to there. I put in the chat. All my books are there on Amazon. You can pick them up in paperback and Kindle format. You can pick up the new ISIS, the main event, or you can pick up the new, well, it's out of camera range. This is ISIS, the main event. That's going to be available. It's available in paperback now, but it'll be on Kindle on April 6th. You can pre-order it. I have John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose, which is now available in paperback, and it's also available on Kindle Unlimited right now. And I have other books like The Man Crisis, which is available on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle formats. And last year's SJS Direct books, John Haynes, Dark Succubus, ISIS, All That Glitters, Eastern Goddess of, and the wonderful Josh Howard variant of John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose. I also am available. You can donate to my Patreon, and that helps me keep continuing to make videos and do streams like this, and see if I can put that up there. So donations there are used to pay for the book covers, pay for the internet, and pay for, basic stuff like this. All the book covers I do like these are paid for with Patreon donations. So all your Patreon money, this is what you're spending. This is what gets spent on, because I have tangibles to show you. And I also have a Cash App if you want to donate to there. Have a Twitter. Let me see. I'm on Twitter, and see if I can get. Here we are. Here's my Twitter. Usually I do a lot of book promotion over there. And I have a Facebook. Let's see. So you can catch me on all sorts of social media. I'm going to leave a link to my YouTube channel as well.
Yes, the YouTube channel is Shawn James. I've actually put that in the description.
Okay, great.
Of this video. But go ahead and put in a link. You put it in a private chat, but
I'll put it there too. So I also have I have an Instagram as well. So I'm all over the internet, and you can pick up my books on Amazon.com. And again, we have ISIS, the main event, coming out on April 6th. And I'm hoping everybody picks up that book, and John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose. And I want to thank you for having me on the show. I really enjoyed being on the show.
Thank you. I want to thank you for being my guest, and one day we'll do this again. We're probably gonna have to do a movie review as well because you're a screenwriter
Yeah.
as well. Oh, do you have any movies that things that you're working on, or the screenplays that?
Right now I'm in the middle of working on. I just finished the John Haynes story for 2021, and I'm starting the ISIS story for 2021. So that's what I'm working on right now, and I'm doing the second draft of my Eternal Night, which is a vampire novel. I'm in the second draft of that. I'm hoping to get that out this fall, but that's what I'm working on right now.
Okay, so no screen plays at the moment.
I haven't done a screenplay in a while, but I'm thinking about maybe going back to doing one sooner rather than later. It's a matter of time, but I have all the SJS Direct Universe books. They take a lot of time for me to put together because just as I finish one set, I got to start another set.
Yeah, I'm in the process. I think I'm gonna use this quarantine time to work on a book idea that I have. Those stuff out that I wanted to get out before the end of the year. So I got plenty of time on my hands to do it. And I'm going to, meantime, I have the Kindle version of The Man Crisis. So after I finish reading I Heard You Paint Houses, I'm going to check out The Man Crisis myself.
Oh, great.
Yeah. But Shawn, thank you for being on the channel. We will do this again. And thank you to all of my listeners and fellow YouTubers. Please subscribe to this channel. Please donate. We have the donation box for Cash App, PayPal, and Google Pay. They're going to be possibly eventually, Shawn, I'm going to be doing a podcast eventually to get away from YouTube and Facebook because when I've shared my YouTube live streams with Facebook, whether I'm talking about a movie review, for instance, on Madam C.J. Walker and The Banker, I got flagged by Facebook for violating community standards, which I don't know how that could have even happened. But that's one of the reasons why I want to eventually just do my own podcast. So that'll be coming soon. But
that would be the best thing to do. I mean, I usually move more controversial content to Patreon, or I move it to BitChute. So that's the way as I avoid dealing with YouTube and their flag system.
Well, this was Facebook too, but YouTube is on the same BS sometimes because I know that we have more than 2 viewers.
Yeah.
But I have over 267 subscribers. You have 1,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
So or more. So I know they're on some BS with the analytics there. But nevertheless, I appreciate the venue. I appreciate the media, and I appreciate you for coming on the show, and I appreciate my listeners. So thank you all for tuning in to channel gboot2786. This is Gavin Richard for Gavin Richard Presents. Stay blessed, be safe. God bless us all. Peace.
All right. Coming to paperback and e-readers this April, ISIS, the main event. It's carnage inside of a steel cage as the goddess next door steps in the squared circle against the beast from the falls in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, the main event, this April.